I'm Bella Martin, and today I'm going to be interviewing Richard Petty and Dale Inman for the Sparks program for the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America. Hi guys.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are we doing today? We're out in North Carolina. We're bringing the Daytona to you guys instead of you guys coming down. How does that feel? Good to be in your hometown, right?
Yeah, we'll be down there in a couple of months to check it
Oh,
out.
you will?
Okay? Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I heard you guys were coming to the Daytona 500, correct?
Oh, yeah, we'll be there.
Cool.
We can't plan too far ahead. But
Yeah.
we plan
Right? We don't want to do that. All right. Well, so today I just have some questions for you guys just to kind of learn more about who you guys are, more about your racing history, your career, and everything like that, okay? All right. So first we'll start with, what was your introduction into motorsports? Would you
Well,
say?
mine was, my dad was in the racing, so I was automatic. My dad started racing in 1949, ran the first Cup Series race for NASCAR, and I was like 11 years old. So I grew up around race cars, so I worked on Dad's car, and went to him with all the races and stuff. And then when I got old enough, then I started driving. So that was my introduction to all the racing.
Gotcha. What was yours?
Well, sometimes we're cousins, and for Richard and Maurice to get to where we could ride our bicycles and go swimming in what we called a swimming pool, which was actually a mud hole down at Polecat Creek, I helped them a little bit on their daddy's race car, and we could do very little because we was young, but we had to get it done before we could do our thing, and and then I started going to the races with them as a kid because there was no televisions and no video games and all that stuff to play, so that occupied a lot of my Sundays, and I didn't go on the long trips when they had to go north and stuff like that, but sometimes the family was gone, and of course I missed them then, but then when Richard got old enough to drive, I kind of got caught up going with him, so and it's I guess we've been together since diaper days.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, cousins first though, and then
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. All right, racing legends second, but cousins first.
A lot of people know that. So.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so what do you remember about your first ever race?
Yeah, Dale and myself and one boy named Red Myler. We went to Columbia, South Carolina. Took a convertible, and I'd never been on a racetrack. And so we towed the thing down there and unloaded it, and I jump in it and go out and run around a little bit, and we come in and talk about it, and I go run again, I guess, and we qualify. I don't know where we qualified, but anyhow, they ran a 200 lap race, and we wound up sixth.
Oh wow!
And not because we outrun anybody, we just finished the race. Okay, and then again, that was my first driving experience. And coming up the road, we was in a pickup truck, and there's three of us sitting in the seat, and I looked over at Dale and said, I think I'm gonna like this driving part. So that was the beginning of my racing career.
Wow, that's awesome. So that was just the first time that you were like addicted to the driving. You were like, I gotta go fast. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so in the early years, Lee Petty, your dad obviously, headed Petty Enterprises. So could you tell us about working and racing under him a little bit?
Well, he was the boss man, okay, and that's what everybody called him. He called all the shots from the standpoint of what was done to the race car, and as we got older, we started doing things to the car. But to begin with and stuff, he pointed out, and he was the boss man, and he ran the race from the cockpit. In other words, when he wanted to stop, he stopped or whatever, because we didn't know what to do. And then we got a little bit more sophisticated as we got a little bit older, like in 1958, 59. Then things got a little more professional and stuff, and we started looking at that. But it was kind of a deal that he was very stern, and and he never praised you for doing anything, because he said, look, if we hire you to do this job, so why should I pat you on the back when you do it? Okay, so we took that in stride and just went on down the road.
Yeah, just kept going with it. That's awesome though. So in this era, it was common for families like yours to be involved together in the sport, right? So it's rarely this case now that we're seeing. Why do you really think that that is?
Tell him, Bill.
Well, you know, some families are, you know, and, but, you know, getting back to Lee a little bit, Lee was 35-year-old when he started driving, and, you know, you keep referring it to as a sport. Somewhat it is, but it's still a business too, you know, to make a living. And he won the first Daytona 500 when he was 45-year-old.
Wow.
And then, you know, of course, I'm going back a little bit, but when Richard went to, they didn't let Richard run until he's 21-year-old. Now I think they can run when they're maybe 10. I'm exaggerating. But when he turned 21, July the 2nd, we went to Columbia, South Carolina, July the 12th, me and him and Red Miler, he's down here. Of course, I know I'm more nervous than he is. And we were running along there, and Joe Weatherly was down there without a car, and he was one of the better drivers in. I said, now if Richard needs help, you'll come and help him, because they was relief drivers back then, and they can't be now because the seats are so sophisticated. But and the signal back then was, if you wanted to drive, you patted on your head. But during the race, I'm nervous, and Richard, I go get Joe, and he puts his little gloves on the helmet, and he does that about twice coming up the road. I said, Richard, why was you patting on your head and it coming in? He said, my head was itching. So I tell people I had to work with a driver that didn't know he had a helmet on, so that's what I've had to work with all the years. But no, you're getting back to the family thing.
Yeah.
Working nowadays is so much different from what it was back then, and you know, most of the work now is from 7 to 4:30 or 5 o'clock, just regular hours. And I mean, we pulled all-nighters and then leave to go 1,000 miles away because we had to. But you know, my theme to the new guys is it ain't always been this easy.
Yeah.
And there wasn't no airplanes. In fact, me and Richard's brother drove the race car from right here to Riverside, California.
Oh my gosh.
And drove it back for Lee to race. But he run a race in Trenton, New Jersey on Friday, and ran Riverside on Sunday for the points, and won the championship that year. But,
wow.
So when I say it ain't always been this easy, I can tell stories to prove.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense though, especially with just like, you know, all of our, we're able to set up.
But everything's like that. Farming's different. You know,
Yeah.
when they farm with horses, and now they got tractors with air conditioning. It's the way of life.
Yeah, just makes sense. But so back to you though, when you were saying that at your first race you were, you just drove your car and you're like, I think I'm gonna like this a lot. What was that feeling that you got when you first raced behind the wheel? What was that feeling like?
Man, I've been so long ago. I
You don't remember?
really remember. It was just something that just sort of came natural. Okay, I knew I wasn't a race car driver. I knew I was going to have to learn to do it, but I wanted to learn. And it took me a few years to learn how to stay on four wheels. I didn't do that all the time in the rest of my career either, but I tried.
Oh my
And it was just a slow progression that all of a sudden, to begin with, I was just interested in being crew chief, or, you know, working on a car, and Daddy doing his deal, winning races and championships. And then I said, okay, you know, this is what I want to do. So concentrated more on not only working on the car with Dale and my brother and stuff, but I worked on watching people drive. Okay, and I'd learned that by watching a lot of the good drivers in their heyday. So I like the way this guy drove here or there, and their attitude and stuff like that. So you had sort of a guideline, you know what I mean? And you know, I guess my daddy was the biggest guideline, because he said, you know, to win a race, first you gotta finish, okay? And so, that was our deal. Back then, you didn't have any sponsors and stuff, so you had to finish the race to get enough money to go to the next race.
Right.
So, it was a real family situation at that time, and like we was talking about before, the things that changed is the monetary deal, it's got to be a business now, okay? To begin with, it was just a sport. I mean, these guys would go, get a car off a used car lot and go race it. Things don't like that happen now.
Yeah.
So it's a very professional sport. So it got away from the family as far as running the business. Family still enter deals and run the front office and stuff like that. But to begin with, here at Petty Enterprises, my mother kept the books, my brother built the engines, Bill built the cars,
Yeah.
I drove the cars. So it was just a big family operation.
Right. It's a tight family unit. I love that though, because it makes it more of like, this is our team.
Yeah,
It's not a bunch of
it
people
was,
that are
yeah.
hired in. It's
Yeah.
like, no, these are my cousins. This is my brother and sister. Like, this is our team, It's a very tight family unit. I love that. But back to you, Mr. Dale. What are the qualities that a successful crew chief needs that you would say?
Well, I've heard reporters ask crew chiefs what made a good crew chief,
Yeah.
and I've heard them talk for 30, 40 minutes, maybe an hour telling about it, but a good driver really helps. And Richard qualified for that, but I've worked with other drivers too, but me and Richard go back so far. I mean, we go back to riding their bicycles and going swimming in the mud holes and playing high school football together. And I think on the football field we were protective of each other. I know several incidents where there was scuffles and we kind of teamed up with each other, but it's just, there's just so many memories that I bring up in my mind once in a while, but it's just been a great relation over the years. But I don't think I learned that much about it. I think we've always had people here, and I know their qualities, and I never asked them to do anything they couldn't do. And I could there's a lot of people we had here that I couldn't do what they done, but I know when I needed them, where I need them, and I think making calls on pit stops and stuff like that, I think Richard believed in me. And when we went out to practice the first time with the car, I think he drove it hard because he trusted the car. So it's just a trusting and relation that we've had forever, I guess.
Yeah.
A lot of years.
Exactly that. And so you would say you're really good at kind of using people's best qualities in the places that they're good at.
I think I understood what they were capable of doing but we've had people that would practice pit stops here and be good, but get in front of the crowd, they couldn't do it, or under the pressure of the race, and I had to figure that out,
Right.
But and it's such a different world today, and me and Richard got to accept it, whether we like it or not. We've got to accept it because it's what it is. But it's just such a different world. But there's been some good people through the years that went on and had success other places and stuff like that, and they come to me, and of course to Richard too, and thank us for getting them started. And but I don't know that I don't know what I was good at, but we won races together. That's
There
all
you
I can
go.
say.
Just a good combination.
Yeah. Okay, so but with the 200 wins, how much of that would you say was more so like the car or the driver? Like, what was the magic? I think that's what most people want to know. Is what do you think was the magic behind all of it?
A lot of it was fate.
That it was fate.
Yeah. You're looking at a guy there's a record out there. You're looking at a guy that's got both ends of this record. I have won more races than anybody, but I've lost more than anybody. So, you know,
Yeah.
so you look at it from that, and I think consistency was what it was all about. You know, we was there every week, and every race they had, whether it was in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, or Tyler, Texas, or, you know, it didn't make any difference. We went to race.
Right.
Racing was our business. And at that time, up until the early 70s, you operated on what you wanted at the racetrack. You didn't have sponsors and stuff, or fancy names on down the side of the car and stuff like that. So you had to get the job done. And the deal, I think that both of us were fairly patient. We knew what we had to do get at the end of the day. So a lot of times we didn't do some stuff that some of the rest of them done during the race because we wasn't trying to run fast or nothing. All we wanted to do was win. So Dale most of the time had a decent strategy, you know, and you know, back then we didn't even have telephones. I mean,
Yeah.
So we thought, I guess we've been around so much, we thought on the same level.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, if we seen something, we both seen it the same way.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if we heard something, we heard it the same way. And so the combination there was just beyond belief. And I just, when I look back and look at the whole career and stuff, of him being my cousin, living up here half a mile up the road, we're all growing up together, getting in the racing business together.
Right.
It's just been that life, okay? And so it's worked out pretty good for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I love that you guys still live in your hometown. Like, oh, that's awesome to me. Okay, so let's see. How did each of you deal with the danger of the profession?
I didn't see no danger.
You just
Yeah.
saw I'm driving,
Yeah.
like I'm
Yeah.
racing.
He'd come and get me out of the race car because it's all upside down and stuff. We was at Darlington, turn the car over, and it landed on its top. And Dale, Richie, Bars worked for us, so they run out on the track to get me out. And
I thought he was dead.
Oh, really?
Dale tells Richie, he says, "I think this got him. I think he's dead."
Oh, gosh.
So I was upside down. They pulled my seatbelt and I hit this.
And he said,
And I made a racket. They said, "He's okay."
Thank God you were okay too,
Well,
right?
When they heard me grunt, they knew I was all right.
Yeah.
when I was talking to Richie about getting him out, I said, Richie, you know, man, you got him out of that race car, and this is before rescue people and all that. You know, the crews ain't allowed to go out there. But every wreck he's been in there, I've been there for him, even when he broke his neck at Pocono and all that. But Richie said, "You mean when we dropped him?"
He remembers it too.
Oh my gosh.
That's great.
No, but you know, they got the pit road speeds now, and we operated without pit road speed. I mean, you know, just Daytona and Talladega, 290 mile an hour on pit road. You know, you're out there changing tires. I didn't think about it. No helmets. You know,
Oh my
No
gosh.
safety features.
no fire suits or nothing. And then of course we're operating with the blackboards, you know. And then I think it was about 1972 that we got radios that worked, you know. And boy, what a relief that was, you know. But we didn't know what it was at the time, and we were one of the first ones to get them because people getting in come to the top driver attach, you know, and then everybody got them now, and even people in the grandstand can hear what we're doing. But it's just been such a long ride, and NASCAR's been so successful, and if you wanted to talk to them about any kind of change of anything, you brought up safety first, and they would listen to you. And but you know, I tell people, when we build a race car from one year to the next, we put Richard right here in the middle of the floor in a seat and build a race car around him. And now it's not like that. You can buy every piece that goes on the car, and you can't alter it none. But even when Chrysler was making racing pieces, we altered them, and I think we was way ahead of the other teams on that because we built it for Richard's convenience. And
Gotcha.
it's just been what it is.
Yeah. So you guys really customized it towards your driver more so.
What he needed.
Yeah, what you needed.
What he needed.
What I
and
thought I needed. anyway.
Yeah.
No, but, and then, you know, we operated without power steering, and he never was very good at working out and getting strong. He used this mental thing to work with, and, so we had to make it steer easier before power steering, and me and him together worked on that, you know, and, we couldn't fix the pieces. He could have, but I couldn't, but we got people to do it, and I think we had one driver, Buddy Arrington, that got some of the stuff that we had, and he couldn't believe how much it helped, you know, so. But we'd probably done raced with it 2 or 3 years, you know, so. But it's, and I keep saying this, I'm repeating myself, but it's just such a different world right now, it's just unreal. From the driver's standpoint, they got videos that they
Yeah.
drive the cars and all this other stuff, and of course, last year, they run the race with the cars that far off from the ground and no practice, and our cars traveled about that much, you know.
Oh my
and
gosh.
I keep saying this, it's just a different world.
Yeah, I believe that. That's
Okay.
for sure. But anyways, so the Petty Enterprise fielded some of the most recognizable cars in NASCAR. What's your favorite? If you can
boy.
pick one, if not top 3.
You know, the Superbird would have to be
Okay.
the car. No matter where it came from or who used it, it had that wing and nose deal, and it looked like a race car, but it was a humongous big car. Okay, and the only places we could run it was on super speedways, mile or above, and it was really a good handling car. In fact, it took us a little while. The car was designed, and it was designed to go straight. Then we would get down to the corner and try to turn it, still try to go straight. So Dale and Lynn had to work on that thing, I don't know, what, 2 or 3 races before we figured out how to get the car to really turn. But we had a good year with that car. I think I won 5 races with a Superbird, and Pete Hamilton won Daytona and both Talladega races.
As
for
our
Petty
team
Enterprise.
cars,
Oh wow.
40 and 43 at that time.
Yeah, so that was a good year for them, and we didn't run probably, what, 10 or 12 races with Superbird to begin with, so we had a good year with that, so. You know, and then we've got a car over there that we won 35, 40 races in, just one car, you know. It's, I always felt like, and people ask you, you know, what was your favorite car, like you said, what car I was in was my favorite one. You know,
Yeah.
whether it was this kind of car or that.
Yeah.
And we've been fortunate, we've won at Petty Enterprises, we've won races at Petty Enterprises in 7 different model cars, Fords and Chevrolets and you know, Chryslers and you name it.
Pontiacs and
You know,
Buicks.
yeah, so, you know, we never did get a Volkswagen or anything like that, but, we were fortunate enough to have good people at Petty Enterprises that no matter what the model was, they adapted for whatever that was, so it made it easy for me. All I had to do was go out and drive the car.
That's awesome. Superbird's my favorite probably too, but you know. How did you get the blue color? Like, why the blue color? Because I've seen some theories on it, but I was like, I'm gonna ask him, because why not?
It was that by accident, okay?
Okay.
Was back here in the shop one night, and we were working on the car and getting it all ready, and I don't know, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, the car hadn't been painted, and we had to go to the race the next day.
Oh gosh.
And so we got ready we're gonna paint the thing, and didn't have a paint booth, we just in a stall up there. And so we went over to the paint deal. This is how far we figured ahead. You know what I mean? We didn't, you know, so we went to the paint booth deal, and we had about yay much blue paint, and about yay much white paint. Instead of painting it 2-tone and shaping it up, we poured it all together, you know, and painted the thing, and it looked pretty good. And, you know, once we run it, we said, you know, that's not a bad color. But I remembered what the ratio was with one color to another color. And so, you know, once we'd seen it and liked it and stuff, we just went to town and said, okay, mix this combination for us, and all of a sudden we had Petty Blue.
Petty Blue,
And
yeah.
so we just stuck with it. And this probably happened somewhere in the late 50s or early 60s, somewhere in that area.
Oh, wow. It's beautiful. I love it. You guys did a good mess up. That was a good mistake there, right? If you were to tell your past selves something before all the wins, all the racing and everything, what would it be? Like if you could tell your younger self something.
Don't get into racing.
It's a bad disease, and it's addictive.
It's addictive.
I'd never recommend it for anybody. Okay?
I wouldn't for sure.
You know,
When we done it.
Oh,
Today it ain't bad, really.
well, it's just,
Cause
I
these
keep
people,
saying it's a different world. I mean,
Mhm.
you go from 40s to 50s to 60s to 70s to 80s, and end of the day, just look at what's around you. Look at the roads that we're in now. Look at the cars we want. Look at the airplanes. Look at the houses. Everything has just been improved. There was nothing new discovered. They're just taking everything and making it better,
Mm-hmm.
smaller, or bigger, or whatever they want to do. So it's just there it is.
All right. So, what lessons from the track do you guys apply to your lives in general, day to day? Any lessons that you've learned?
Mine's patience. His is not. The good Lord gives
this
everybody
is good.
so many patience when they're born. Okay? This is the most patient man I've ever seen, because he's never used any of his patience. Okay?
I had to have patience to put it in him.
No, I don't think
His
so.
favorite pastime is sleeping,
Oh my gosh.
but he can get up at 4 o'clock in the morning if he has to, but somebody's got to get him up, and he can stay up all night. We don't have to eat, we can just.
We just do whatever it
We
takes
do
to
what
make
we
it
have
work.
to do.
Yeah.
Me and him went to Virginia to meet a friend, probably 3 or 4 hours away, and come back home, and my wife Mary said, "Where'd y'all stop and eat?" And I said, "Well, we didn't." She said, "If me and Linda had been along, you would have." And it's kind of that way. And a lot of the crew, they didn't adapt to mine and Richard's travel styles, and they fussed about that, but we didn't let it bother us.
Yeah, that's good though. But so let's go to drawing upon your racing careers again. What advice would you give for new racers if they are getting into the sport?
Anybody that wants to get into racing, I'm just going to go from a driver's standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
They might think they want to be race car drivers.
Mm-hmm.
They jump in a car and they run, like me, they like it and stuff like that. But it's going to take you 3 or 4 years to really find out if you've got what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, then you got to put, if you want to get to that point, you got to put blinders on. You got to forget boyfriends, girlfriends, fancy cars, partying. You got to concentrate on nothing except where you want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go back and talk to the most successful guys in racing, that's what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
They dedicated themselves when they was 10 years old or 5 years old or 20 years old or whatever it is. And so, and I think that's probably the same thing in any sportsman. If that's what they want, they got to forget the rest of the world for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then once you get to where you at, then you let the rest of the world catch up.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. What would your advice be to get into it? Not as a driver, like maybe as a crew chief or something.
Well, it's hard to explain that with the difference in time, but
Mhm.
back when we was coming, it was such a dedication that you had to have, and our families had to sacrifice. And my wife tells the story, back in the day, we never went on vacation. I said, "Mary, you've been all over the world." She said, "Yeah, but there's a racetrack there." And so, but it's let us see the world. And but I think there's life in racing now where a man can have a family and be home with it, but the traveling team can't, you know, they got to sacrifice. But I'm not sure the traveling families today last as long as me and Richard did. And, you know, you're talking about drivers, in his case, and I can kindly prove it, the reason he liked to drive, he was scared to work, you know, he didn't want to work. But he did work during the winters, and I feel that on him. But, Lord, he loved to drive. I mean, it was just, I mean, he's gotten, he broke his neck at Pocono, and next race was Talladega, and we got lucky, and he started the race to get the points, but we had a driver to get in right early, and then the next race, he run and nothing happened. And I mean, there's so many stories that'll never be told, but, and there's probably drivers out there now that's running hobby stuff that's great, but they'll never be discovered. You've got to be fortunate to be at the right place at the right time. The crew chiefs,
Same thing.
same thing.
Gotcha.
Tire changers, and I drove the truck, changed the tires, and called a race. Now they got people that come in and do nothing but do the crew chiefs.
Yeah.
I mean, and then not crew chiefs, but pit stops. You know, and it's just unreal. And we cannot put a separation between what it is now and what it was then.
Right.
And you can't get it out of us because we don't know it.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know the secret to the time change, right?
The difference in times.
The difference in time. Well, so then what was your favorite race that you ever did?
You know, the first race was important. The 200th race was important, but every one in between was important. I guess probably, well, no doubt about it, winning the 200th race, Daytona, on July the 4th, in front of the President of the United States. Okay, you know, what other, how could that be more of a big deal? Okay?
Right.
And so, you know, when you look back at it on that standpoint, but if I hadn't won my first race, then I wouldn't have, that would have been 199th race, okay? Wouldn't have been such a big deal. Well, it'd been pretty big being the president was there, but, you know, but the 200th and the whole July the 4th deal and all that, you know, Hollywood wouldn't buy the script, okay? I mean, it's too unbelievable. But it happened, and we were just very fortunate to be circumstances that it was our day to do it, and was able to pull it off.
Yeah, that's so cool. Do you have a favorite race, or is that yours too?
No, you know, the way he tells it, it's, I understand his part, but 7 Daytona 500 is pretty big.
Yeah.
And we've been so, I say we, it's him. We was fortunate to win some of them. Some of them we outrun them, and we stole a couple.
We lost a couple the same way, so.
Yeah, and, but, you know, coming to the flag with Pearson and Reckon, you probably don't know that, but but 7 Daytona 500, and no matter what, that's the biggest race of the year. If you win the Daytona 500 when the driver's introduced anywhere, he's known as the Daytona 500. And
it's our Super Bowl. We just start to end the beginning of the year with the biggest race.
Right.
And
but you know, we, like he says, every win we run on 1/5 of a mile tracks in Long Island, New York, and Bowman Gray Stadium, he won his 100th race, 1/4 mile track, you know, about 40 miles from here, 45 miles from here, and there was a little racetrack about 2 or 3 miles up here, Tar Heel Speedway. I think they run 3 or 4 races up there, and it's in the history book, but I think you won maybe 1 or 2 of them, and then Pascal drove for us and run the
he won a couple of them.
And it's just, gosh, I have to look in the books to see what you know, Petty Enterprise did in Bloomberg. And
Kind of hard to keep up with 70 years. So.
Yeah, I can imagine.
you can't.
Or
yet.
I can't imagine. Yeah, not yet, but I don't know. I don't know if I'll be as sharp as you guys are at that age.
But I can't remember tying the shoes while ago, so go ahead.
Okay, so what would you say the most pivotal moment in your career was?
Wow. That'd be a toughie.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I got no idea where to even start, from that standpoint. Whether it was getting my dad's okay to be able to do it,
Mm-hmm.
or, getting our first sponsorship or something, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so that's just from my side, it's an unanswerable question. Okay.
Right. Okay. So I just have one more question for you, or what's our time at? Okay. So, did you have any pre-game rituals or pre-race rituals that you would do before you would go race?
Yeah, we'd get up in the morning and we'd go to the
No, I'd get him up of a
and
morning.
we'd go to the racetrack
Uh-huh.
and run a race. I mean, that was,
Yeah.
there was no superstitions or, wearing the right socks or shorts or, eating the right food, doing none of that kind of stuff. We didn't have time for that stuff.
Right.
We was busy racers, and our deal was we'll get up, get to the racetrack as early as you can, make sure the car's ready to go,
Mm-hmm.
get in the car, go run the race, and whether you won or lost, your next thought was, hey, we won the race or something like that. Where are we going next week?
Oh, wow.
We gotta get home.
You were already on the
We
next
gotta
race.
as quick as they throw the checker flag, we're ready for next week.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, was probably the biggest thing that kept me and him going.
Mm-hmm.
We challenged each other, so, what can we do to make the car better so that we can do, even though we won the race, we wanna do better next week.
Right.
That was our conversation after the race. We got to come back here, we got to be better.
Oh my gosh. After the Daytona 500, you got your trophy, you're like, okay, we're ready for the next one. Let's go.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Awesome.
You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, we won one of the Daytona 500s, and when the race was over, I got in the truck. I mean, and got in the sleeper, slept all the way home. Guy drove us home because the next morning we got up and had to get that car ready to go to Richmond, which was the next race the Sunday after that. So I went with a car so to make sure the car got there. But, you didn't have airplanes to fly on and all that kind of stuff. You done what it took to get it to the next race.
But the race where him and Pearson came to the line and wrecked,
Mm-hmm.
just before the checker, that Pearson went on, he could start his car before Richard got his started.
Mm-hmm.
Pearson won the race, we were in second. We brought that car home. It was wrecked and won Rockingham the next week with it.
Wow.
So that's the history that
That's
we
the way
talk
we
about.
operated.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you ever get nervous for a race?
What's that?
I did.
Nervous before
He didn't
you
have
went
to,
race?
I got nervous
You
for
got
both of
nervous.
us, yeah.
That's the reason I had him. He done all the worrying, and he's the one that got nervous, so I could just sit and relax.
That's a good way to do it, right?
And he used it too, trust me.
Awesome. Well, I think this has concluded our interview for the day. So thank you so much, guys, for having us up into your hometown. This has been so awesome to see where you guys grew up and everything. And we hope to see you guys at the Daytona 500 this year.
We'll be there and wave at you.
We're
okay?
planning
All right, wave at me. Yes, say
This year,
hi.
yeah.
All right, once again, I'm Bella Martin from the Spark program at the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America, and I interviewed Richard Petty and Dale Inman. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, man.
Thank
It's been
you.
great.
Good,
Thank you.
yeah, it's been awesome.